Welcome to Fleet News Group podcast. I'm Caroline Falls, and today I'm speaking with Dan Caesar, CEO of Fully Charged, in Australia from his London base for the Everything Electric Australia Expo organised by Fully Charged at the Sydney Showground in early February. Welcome, Dan.
It's really good to see you.
Now, the Fully Charged show, for those who aren't here, let's just paint a bit of a picture of the show and the buzz. So there's a lot of electric cars and buses on show, there's charging providers, and there's talks going on in a variety of theatres, there's people going from booth to booth. What's going on?
Well, we would sum it up as a festival of electrification. We started as a YouTube channel. We still have a YouTube channel. We're based in the UK, but we have a global audience, a big audience in Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane in particular. And YouTube doesn't pay the bills, so we have to find a clever way to, talk about electric vehicles of all shapes and sizes and clean energy around the world. And so we started doing events in the UK in 2018. This is our second time in Australia, but we've run events in Canada as well, the US, Europe, and UK too. This is our 13th event around the world. And we cover, electric cars are a big part of what we do, but they're not the only part of what we do at all. So actually, commercial vehicles is really, really important to us, as is all the infrastructure stuff, the charging, how you get solar power, all those sorts of things. So we're here in Sydney, again, after 11 months. We've seen the electric car market almost double in size in the last year or so. As we've landed, efficiency regulations are becoming a big part of the news topic in Australia, and we're fascinated to see Australia really start to pick up and buy more electric vehicals. But we're interested in commercial vehicles as well, which I think is going to be a little bit slower maybe, but also a very important market.
Yeah, definitely our market as a Fleet News Group. But you refer to sort of how slack our purchase of electric vehicles was just a couple of years ago. I was looking at some stats the other day, and EVs as a percentage of new car sales in Australia was like about 1% 2 or 3 years ago, and now we're up to 8% plus. And so it's just phenomenal growth here and around the world, and the excitement's palpable. From your perspective, and yes, you have a global one, which I really appreciate. What's happening? Why is it happening? Is policy the key?
Policy is really important. There are other factors as well. More affluent nations will be able to go more quickly than those that are not. More progressive advanced nations will be able to go faster than those that are not. We believe in the saying, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. So the most advanced market by percentage of electric vehicle sales is in Norway. It's the poster child for electric cars, and in January 92.1% of new car sales were pure electric. So it's a good canary in the coal mine. We can see roughly what's going to happen in the different countries and over what time frame. For example, in Norway, they have abandoned petrol and diesel in favour of pure electric, but they've also abandoned the hybrid as well, which I think is interesting. And so looking at that and looking at other countries, Iceland's over 50%, Sweden similar, places like the Netherlands over 30%, China, which I'm sure we'll come back to, over 30%. Everyone is somewhere on the same journey, but some are a little bit further back. Australia, I think, is going to make some really rapid progress now. As you say, the numbers have gone up very significantly. They've more than doubled in the last year, but a big part of that was the lack of availability of electric vehicles in Australia this time last year. That's obviously changing, and you can see from the show that's changing very, very quickly. So we think you might get as high as 12-15% by the end of this year in Australia, which would be a remarkable change in a short period of time. But without policy certainty, without those sort of signals, it is harder. The UK is possibly the only major market that has plateaued, and it has plateaued because the UK government has pulled away the plug-in car grant, as it was known in the UK. They've pulled away the charger grant in the UK, and they have knocked back the zero emission vehicle mandate from 2030 to 2035. and the economic conditions in the UK aren't great at the moment as well. So actually what that's meant is that the UK now is hovering around the 15% mark, whereas probably with a different set of policies, different conditions, it could easily be up to 25% by now. So yeah, policy is really important. The fuel efficiency regs discussion that's a very live thing in Australia is interesting to us, but we think the more politicians in Australia embrace it, the more likely the Australian consumer, the Australian business person is to benefit, but also it will send signals to vehicle manufacturers, come and build your electric cars in Australia. Australia is blessed with lots of natural materials and resources. Why wouldn't a BYD or a Tesla want to set up shop and actually manufacture the cars here? If there's enough demand and there's consistent policy support, they will come.
Well, we do have high labour costs, but it would be beautiful to see more manufacturing of automotive come back to Australia for sure. So I was just wondering, like, what you say in the UK, like, has that depressed the mood? What's the mood like, and what's the, like the excitement here? Is there anything distinctive about the phase we're in at the moment in Australia? Like maybe it's the thirst for knowledge about everything EV. Yeah, just the different moods.
Personally, this is my second time in Australia, and I find it to be a very positive place. I find there to be, a lot of energy here. I think the UK is in a slightly depressed frame of mind, which extends well beyond this, by the way. It's we've had the same government for 14 years. I don't want to go on it, don't want to make this a sympathy crusade for us in Britain, but we're looking forward to a government change, and we're looking forward to some sort of fresh thinking and fresh ideas. This is a classic early stage market, and I think there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement. But if you take Norway, for example, that enthusiasm is carried right through to where they are now. So it is very possible. I think in the UK, which might interest you, what's propping up the market is actually the fleet market. So in the UK, there is a very generous salary sacrifice scheme, which makes electric vehicles a bit of a no-brainer really for fleet managers. So actually at the moment, that is what's carrying the UK market, keeping it where it is right now. Because if you manage a fleet, spreadsheet is your friend. You're going to need to understand economically if these vehicles are going to work for you. And once people do that, typically they realise actually that these vehicles are very, very competitive indeed. So I think it is possible to harness that early stage enthusiasm, carry it right through. But obviously, different politics, different signals can have an effect. We look at America with interest at the moment. America is the other market which causes us a bit of concern, and obviously they are going into a political electoral cycle as well this year, which we think will probably result in quite a big polarisation around electric vehicles in particular. But I think Australia is really well set, and hopefully yourselves and organisations like us and people who are in the exhibition hall today, like NRMA and Origin Energy, the car companies, hopefully we can all join forces and kind of keep this positive mood going in Australia.
Yeah, I'm glad that you just brought it back to where we are today at the show and some of the exhibitors. But who is this show for? Because it's not just for business, which is mostly a lot of the events I've been to. So we've got a consumer-facing show as well. So I was just wondering how many visitors you anticipate over the 3 days, and who are the visitors?
We'd expect about 15 to 20,000 attendees over the 3 days. Signs are very, very good at this point in time on the morning of, or just the early afternoon of day one. In answer to your question, about 80% of the attendees are consumers and about 20% are business. Obviously, the consumer market is simply bigger, but the business market can spend more because they can buy multiple vehicles. So our audience is very pleased to see both. But I think we try and use the professionalism of the business event combined with that kind of fun and excitement of a consumer event. So it is very much a hybrid event. And we have, as you can see from the exhibition hall, lots of commercial vehicles here and commercial propositions as well. So for us, it's an interesting blend, and we think it benefits from having that fun element. On day one, today is the hybrid press, business and consumer day. There's very few children. in the aisles today. But on Saturday it'll be a different story. There'll be lots of families here as well, looking to purchase the vehicle. Maybe the wife having a test drive, or the husband looks after the kid for a change. But for us, there's benefits to being professional, having that business element and having the consumer element all in one place.
Well, that's another thing that's here, isn't it? Like, you can book in for test drives for electric vehicles. So, Australians are still having their very first experience in an electric vehicle. Do you know anything about the numbers of test drives that are going to get done over the 3 days?
We'd be hopeful we do 5,000 or 6,000 on site. We, at our largest UK show, our best one so far, we've done 10,000 test drives on site. The test drive is absolutely fundamental to this shift, because you're not going from combustion engine car to combustion engine car. Suddenly you've got a totally different drivetrain to consider, and people like the reassurance of taking a test drive. Added to that, sometimes they're looking at a totally different brand they've never seen before. There's a lot of loose loyalty at the moment, and if let's say Toyota haven't got a car out there, then Toyota fans might say, well, I'll try that BYD, for example. So again, if you've never driven a BYD, the test drive becomes more important, right? Who is this brand? What's the quality like? How does it drive? All those things. So we think a test drive is going to take on a much more significant role than it has done for a long, long time. And yeah, we embrace that. You have to go to multiple test dealerships to do multiple test drives at the moment. Here you can test drive, if you're lucky, because there's a lot of demand. You can test drive 3 or 4 or 5 cars in one day or over one weekend, and then you can make your choice of which is the best one for you. So yeah, we would say that probably the test drives is the single biggest pull of everything, I think.
Yeah, it is fantastic. So apart from the test drives, like, what's getting the most attention, do you think? Is it people are curious about charging technology, about battery development, or the vehicles themselves? And also, you might tell us how many exhibitors and speakers you've got.
Well, there's around 100 exhibitors, there's 50 live sessions, there's about 200 speakers. We have sessions going all the time. We also have, in addition to the main stages, we also have an area called the Zero Carbon Kitchen, where plant-based cooking on electric induction. We have an area called the Home Energy Advice Team, where people can come and bring their plans to their property and ask about energy questions. It's hard to generalise, but the typical journey we see is someone gets an electric vehicle and then they look at their energy provider, their energy tariff, and they look at their car charging situation. If they're lucky enough to have a driveway, they'll need to buy an EV charger. So there's lots of that here. There's people like Origin Energy here who can advise you on that, but also energy tariffs as well. And then often, once people have started to get a little bit more open-minded about electric vehicles and the related technologies, they might start to look at solar and batteries as well, because isn't it great to be able to create your own fuel at home? And obviously Australia's much more blessed than the UK with sunshine, so that's great. And there are plenty who come from the other direction. They get a solar first, and then they get an electric car. There's a great technology here where you can power your EV from your PV. So there's all sorts of things on show here. So I think it would take you hours and hours and hours of Google searching and watching YouTube to find out what you can find out in a day here.
I better take advantage of all of this, because
Definitely.
I'm renovating a house at the moment, so I'll go over to the home hub area as well as this transport stuff that I generally focus on. So what makes fully charged so fully charged? Like, the name says it all, but why is it so exciting, do you think?
We're very, very driven individually. Robert Llewellyn, our founder, was pretty well known in the UK in particular from TV. He set it up in 2010. He'd been in a sci-fi comedy called Red Dwarf in the UK. It is known around the world, but it's particularly well known in the UK. And he went on to present something called Scrap Heap Challenge, which is basically engineering-minded people putting stuff together, which in a very short time frame, which generally broke. But he then he's spending more time in California. He got to meet lots of software guys who were putting together things like battery management systems. And he then started to become exposed to things like Tesla. And so he started his YouTube channel in 2010. He is a great articulator of the complex. It makes it so easy, which is such an important thing. And we met in 2016. And since then we've been building out the business, building out the YouTube channels. We've got 2 channels now, and then running events around the world. So yeah, we are very driven. I was into promoting home energy tech since 2003. So we see every person who comes and says, yeah, I bought an electric bike, I bought solar panels, I bought an electric car, we see it as a victory. So really, with that in mind, we are extremely motivated, and we have travelled the world sort of delivering these events and setting them up to start kind of, I guess, being the educational voice for these technologies. So it's great, and I have to say, we really, when we do the shows, it's amazing because we get all the positive energy from the audience, and we can feel that, and then that gives us strength to go and do the next event. So it's a fascinating thing to work on, and Australia's probably given us the warmest welcome anywhere. So we're really glad to be back here.
Well, I know that you yourself have been going fully on since early this morning. You led a media tour around the event, you've been hosting panel discussions on sustainable transport and, more efficient home energy, etc. And now you're with me, and then tonight you're addressing an audience at an event hosted by ChargeFox, which I'll be at if I can stay charged up. But how do you personally stay fully charged? Maybe you should launch an energy drink or something.
Well, that's probably a good idea. I think that for me, I do have my downtime at home with the kids, but there's something just incredible about these events, and I find you just get a big adrenaline surge from doing them. But there is another part of my life where I go to bed early and things like that. But events like this they're just amazing. We have got something really great going on with our business and with the channel, and so I'm just sort of very grateful that we're able to do that. But there's downtime as well. But when we finish in Sydney, then we go home, and then we've got about 6 weeks. So I'll be in the big London show as well. So I feel like I sprint a marathon a lot of the time, and I feel like I've made our team do the same. But it's been an amazing experience. I think that's what keeps us going. We feel like we are making a bit of a difference.
So looking ahead, just at this year, because we're still in the early days of this year, and say maybe even over the next 5 years, like where do you see the big things? What are the biggest things to watch? Do you think it's battery development, electric trucks?
Yeah, I think that as far as the cars are concerned, they're amazing now. Most of them have got 250, 300 mile range. You will see some further range, but lumbering a car with extra battery if people don't need it is probably not required. But the ability to have a car with 400, 500 mile range is absolutely doable in the here and now. But again, you're just giving that car more weight. So we see the car market in Australia is more availability. Is probably the key thing. Increasing uptake. So I think a couple of things that are more interesting to come really are, how do we take the commercial market on the same journey? It's inevitable that the commercial market will be a little bit more conservative, and they have greater demands of their vehicles often than someone who just kind of goes around the city, for example. So electric vehicles can be used for a wide range of applications. They're much more robust, long range, etc., than people probably realise. But it will take a little bit longer, I think, to get, I know the ute market is huge in Australia. It will take a little bit longer to get that up to speed. I think when we come here with Everything Electric Australia next March, I think we'll have a number of different utes on display as well, and that will be helpful. So I do see, that commercial piece as being critically important. The bit I think that's really going to unlock it is bi-directional charging. I think it's going to be really great for a homeowner to have a battery on their driveway, and they're not using that car 95% of the time. So it's a dumb asset for 95% of the time. So the ability to actually have a battery there, which you could charge up on cheaper energy and then use the energy from the battery when the energy off the grid is more expensive, is powerful. Equally, if you have a blackout, the ability to be the one house in the street still with your power on is a very powerful motivator. But for businesses, I think that's even better. So you might have your ute, which actually can power some of your, maybe you've got a chainsaw or something like that. You can actually power stuff off that. I think that will be a powerful motivator as well. And then for larger fleets as well, you see it with buses and other things, lots of them are actually plugging their vehicles in overnight as big batteries, basically, as vehicle to grid systems. So we're seeing that with, you know, huge trucks of school buses in San Diego, for example, that are basically, imagine the school, how often do they use the vehicles? They use them briefly in the morning, and they use them fairly briefly in the afternoon, but the rest of the time they're actually plugged in. They're using them as grid reserves. So some really interesting developments that I think people who are interested in the economics of vehicles will find electric vehicles more and more compelling over time.
Dan, I'm just curious, like, what do you think is driving the EV transition right now? Do you think it's still a desire to be more sustainable, or is it just how sexy EVs have become?
Well, I can tell you this because we run a YouTube channel, but whenever we mention climate or clean air, our viewership dips very significantly. Now, personally, I've been very concerned about climate and clean air for 2 decades, and that's why I am interested in it. But the further you get away from the environmentalists, the more you get into the mainstream, the thing that seems to really work is it's progressive, it's cool, it's new, it's, you know, it's the best tech. And so we lean very heavily into that on our channel. And I do think, you know, once you get over the initial reticence, they don't make much noise, or, you know, they don't make, you know, a nice throaty sound or whatever. Once you get past that, you realise actually these cars are pretty incredible. Like, people get very hung up on the fact that they're very quick off the line. I understand that, and that's certainly appealing. Not, we don't want everyone to speed, but at least you can get out of situations quickly. You know, it's quite nice to have a car that's very, very responsive. I think the thing that's spoken about is how easy these cars are to drive. I've driven gears and stick shift for my whole life, but actually once you get into a car, it's much simpler to drive and therefore much safer. Equally, young people, if they want to learn to drive an electric car, 10 times easier than learning to drive a car with gears. And then it's all the tech, right? I think that's probably what's really grabbing people's attention. A huge percentage of our audience are in the technology industries. Maybe they work for Apple, maybe they buy Apple, maybe they live their life on social media. And those are the people that are buying Polestars, are buying Teslas, because the tech within those vehicles is just extraordinary. And so, we've talked a bit about bidirectional vehicle to grid and all that sort of thing, but you've also got the fact that, you know, in most of these cars now, they have a big screen you can watch TV on, not when you're driving, I should add quickly. Equally, you know, we don't have too many hot days in the UK. When we do have a really hot day in the UK, we don't have air conditioning really in the UK. So my house is quite unbearable on a hot day, but I go and sit in the front drive in my electric car, cooled down by amazing air conditioning, just been powered by the solar panels off my roof, and I can sit there and do some work on my laptop while Netflix is playing in the background, things like that. And kids' engagement, young people's engagement, they want stuff that's, you know, more advanced. So I think they are quite sexy, personally, and I think that, you know, we are sort of consciously using electric vehicles as that kind of aspirational tool to bring people into this bigger world of energy and transport. So I think that will become the dominant force.
That's interesting, isn't it? The second living room, or the third living room, whatever, for you. Now, you mentioned that Fully Charged, you've got another event coming up in about 6 weeks in London. And where else are you going this year?
So we're doing London in 6 weeks, and then I think in about 12 weeks we're doing a show up north in England, in Yorkshire. Then in September we go to Vancouver in Canada, and then we have another event in the UK in October in the south of England. And then next year we go up to 6. We've got an event we've run before, which is coming back in Amsterdam. And yeah, we're often getting asked where after that, and we're trying to figure that out, not because we don't want to. We get asked to go. We've been asked to go to Scandinavia many times. We've been asked to go to Melbourne and Brisbane many times, you know, to Toronto many times. But recently we've been asked to go to Jamaica and Barbados as well. It's with a heavy heart I had to decline that. So we do want to go to other places. We think this is a model which we can, a format which we can replicate elsewhere, but we're only so many people. So that's our problem at the moment with a relatively small team.
But you've already announced that you're going to be back here in Sydney in 2023.
Yes.
in March.
March 2025. That was always our preferred timeline, but we have a London show in March this year, so we moved to February for this show this year. Next year we go back to March, but Everything Electric Australia, Sydney Showground. Hopefully double the size again. Certainly, I think 50% bigger than this year. More test drives, more vehicles, and yeah, I'm really hopeful that we'll get more into the kind of commercial vehicle stuff as well. I think there's actually quite a lot to see this weekend if you're interested in that sort of thing, but I think next year will be even better.
Fantastic. So look forward to seeing you again next year. And for now, thank you so much for your time. I know that you've got a gigantic schedule to fulfill this afternoon and this evening. Thanks again, Dan.
Thank you, it was my pleasure.
You've been listening to Fleet News Group podcast. It was edited and produced by Isabella Fiorentino. You can follow us on Spotify. Just search for Fleet News Group. We're also on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube. Our website is fleetnewsgroup.com, where you can get all of our stories, videos and podcasts. Until next time, drive safely and take care.